Hey, so welcome back to the next video of the series. So with this, what I wanted to start off with is fix up some of the other things that I was working on previously, just some final touches, as well as I said I was going to end up going into the alternative for attacking, but I ended up just not doing in that video. I didn't specify it, but I'm going to go into this video on how we can do it. I have plans for a better ability system so that you could just assign an ability to a monster. But as of right now, we're just going to do like a very default attack. I'm not going to add damage to attacking yet. However, I will be going into the stats. I was a little ambitious with what I said I was going to do next. So this video is going to be about stats. I didn't want to make the video actually too long. And when I go over my stat system, you'll start seeing why it would take a bit longer. So my stat system is going to be a bit more complicated than just like here's health, here's damage, you apply damage. I know a lot of tutorials out there do that. I'm gonna go a little bit further in depth. Um, Not in this series specifically, but I will go over armor later. But as of right now, we're gonna just do um, attack damage, health, mana, and then level XP, and then just subtracting through it all. So with that, first, let me go into, let's see, my first thing is we're going to fix up some of the tasks. So with that, well, for starters, these need to be into this folder. So we're going to just do that real quick. I just like to have it a little bit cleaner. But we want to fix, let's go to move to attack. One thing is to change this on fail. We just want it to not succeed. And then another thing is receive abort AI. So when it has to abort, we're just going to finish execute automatically. I just want it to stop. This may not be super impactful to or completely necessary. However, I find it just better to add this in. And then with that, let's go into elbow task. For this, we're going to do the same thing on interrupt. We're going to fail. Actually, no, sorry, not this one. So on interrupt, we still want to go to the next step. Um, that's okay. But for this, when we go into abort AI, let's go into what we want is that when they stop or they get interrupted, we don't want them to continue attacking. So we're going to actually stop that. So what we'll want is, sorry, this, if you saw the last tutorial, should look like that. Forgot to reset that. What I do is we're going to promote this to a variable so that we could store it. We could cast for a second time in the receive abort AI, but I just don't like to do that. You don't necessarily have to save. I know some people just tend to have the habit of not wanting more variables, which is completely understandable. However, for me, I'm going to go into this. We're going to go ahead and still continue that. And then from here, we want to get the monster. Let's get the mesh. Actually, I think I can go straight into anim instance. Yeah, cool. And then I'll pull it out here. What I want to do is stop the animation that's currently playing. So montage stop. And I'm going to halt whatever animation is currently being played. I can leave that blank because I'm not doing anything. Just going to stop it automatically. And the next thing is drag off from the controller pawn. We want to clear the focus. Focus. Um, oh, sorry. Drag this off. Clear focus. I always forget it's in the controller, not the pawn. I see the word controlled and I think that's okay, but obviously the wrong one. All right. All right, clean that up a little, and then we want to finish abort. Finish abort. Um, Trying to remember. I don't think this is actually fully necessary. I'm gonna leave that as is right now. We'll probably get back to it. But for there, that should be good. And then let me see. I think there was one more thing we wanted to do. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So let's go into the tree. And from here, what I want to do is I want to reset these as well, or change the names for these. So right now it's just kind of set as sequence. However, we didn't name them. So I'm just going to go with, oop, didn't mean to move that. Let's go with something generic until we add something different. We're going to go is alive. Nah. Is alive makes it sound like a bull. We'll just go alive. We'll just do a tag state. And we'll name this reset state. Pretty terrible names right now. Once we go into adding a bit more into this, there'll be a lot more states to add, but we'll leave that as is right now. Yeah, okay, cool. That should be good. Next, we want to go into the elbow attack. Now, the thing I mentioned previously is that there was an alternative so that you didn't have to just select this, and we're going to go into doing that. So let me close out these two tasks. We're going to leave that. I'm going to drag this down just a little bit. Okay. We want, so when we get the monster, we just want to pull out its attack animation. Later on, I'm going to go into like abilities, so you wouldn't even have to do that. We would pull off, and then it would just be cast ability. But that will be significantly later. That system is going to take a bit more time, and I didn't want to extend this video extensively any past like 40 minutes. All right, so what we want to do is add an attack animation to the monster's data. So that way, all you would have to do is pull out data. Probably should name it something so it's easier to find. And then we would just go attack animation. But currently, we don't have anything. Let's go into our data and under here. And then over here, we're going to add attack montage and montage. We may, okay, cool. And then because we added a new variable, we have to go into our other data assets. And this is why I only made 3, because if you had a lot and you change one thing, you have to go into all of them and fix it. There's probably a better way to go about doing that, but I'm not going to. Later on, we'll kind of clear this up. So depending on the ability, depends on what animation to use, whatever it may be. You could even specify. It all depends. Right now, I want the elbow, just what we were currently using. I think I could probably just get the location here. All right, cool. So let's go drag that in. Awesome. Occupy path. And then let's go back into data. I don't think path was the way to go. Should have just copied it from there. That's fine. Paste. Cool. Control S. Just save. Save. Okay, so with that, we should now, let's compile just to make sure that's update. Tag montage. Delete that. Let's extend this. Crunch this up a little, just so it's not as chaotic. Move over here. Just grab that mesh. Okay, cool. All right, and with that, let's try to make sure this is still working as correctly. So we'll go into here. I believe I deleted my spawner on accident. Let's draw that back. get the monster. We'll send to Quincy. All right. Cool. And as you see, they still attack. So with that, you'd be able to just set it in the data, and then you can have an attack for everything. Originally, I don't want to do it that way, but to save time, I think that's a lot better. We'll revise this later on. However, for right now, for a very simple thing, you could definitely go about doing that. If you wanted to keep it simple without going like really in depth, definitely just like set a montage. It has one attack. You're only going to be doing that. Um, of course, you're going to need that tied into like damage, etc. But for now, that should be good. We can close this. We don't need that. And then with this, this should be good for the moment. We'll go ahead and leave that. All right. So let's take a look. I think there was one thing Okay, let's open the Blackboard back up. The last thing I wanted to do is, if we actually see here, the Quinn will follow me, even though it is technically supposed to reset, but it's not happening because he's still trying to finish, and then he goes back. And the reason for that is when I set this service, even though we're switching this on, nothing actually happens. So what we actually need to do is when this is not set, you'll play the attack state. So the moment this goes off and switches, we're going to hop over to here. So now, if we run out of range, she should run back immediately. See? So as long as we're out of range, we're okay. Come here. Nice. Awesome. So that's the last of the updates fixes. For anyone looking for new stuff, this is where we'll start. I'll make sure to include that in the details as well. Should have included that in the beginning as well. But nonetheless, I'll make sure to clarify. The next step is going to be the more in-depth stat system that we're going to do. So we're going to be covering health, mana, attack. We're not doing armor yet. I'll just add the variable of armor, but right now we're not going to go into that. And then we're going to do level, XP, and then all the variables needed to calculate all of that. All right, so with that, under core, I'm going to make an actor component. This stat will be able to have, this is going to be the parent stat component, and then you can make a child on it. So technically this could be used for your player as well. However, I'm not really going to go in depth with that. This is mainly just focused on monsters. I will be adding it to the player at one point just so that I can do damage to the monster. So I will be able to show you that later on when we start implementing damage. So for here, I'm going to add a new folder. We're going to name it component. And then we're going to need blueprint, actor component, and actor component. We'll name it stats. Right. Let's open this up. Let's get rid of that right now. Okay. So the first step is we need to start with our variables, what stats we want, etc. So we're going to add the max stats. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a string, and we're going to move this into a map. For stats, I want to calculate based on floats because I want those decimal points to calculate. And then we're going to want to add in all the variables. Let's see. Oh, it doesn't let me add other ones all at once. Maybe if I compile, can I add more? No. You just can't have it empty. We're going to add health. We're going to do this. We're going to have max health. So this is the max value you can have. We're going to have health. we're going to have max mana, attack. Could do attack damage. I'll just use attack right now because later on we might want to include like different types of attacks. So whether it's like magic, etc. But we can also go into that because there might be other alternatives as well. And then the last thing we want is just going to be attack range. I won't be using this one right now, but this is definitely going to be implemented eventually. And then we're just going to go with, and then of course with that, let's just add some default values. So something super simple. I'm just going to hit 100. For health and mana, they're going to be automatically set to the max one at the start of the game. So you don't need to have a value there. But I just like not to see zeros ever. So with that, let's just go with 50. 50. Attack, we're going to do with 20. And then we'll leave 410. Okay. Or not 400. That's a bit crazy. We're not doing long range right now. We'll go into long range later on. Not at the moment. Okay. And then I'm going to go into the level and XP values. So we're going to do XP values. Pile. And what we'll do is we're going to go into max level. So if you want to add a cap to the level, this is where you'll set it. We'll have level, max XP. This is the value you need to hit in order to gain a level. And then we're going to go with XP. Max level, I'm going to just say 50. Always start off level 1. And then for max XP, I'm going to keep a little simple right here. And then you always want to start at 0. So with the XP, it's not really going to be utilized a lot with monsters unless you want them to gain XP. That's not really important. The reason I'm adding in levels specifically is so that at any point I can use the level like variable for like let's say like a UI, or maybe I want to calculate the damage based on the level. It's a variety of different uses for having it there. XP is mainly there so that I can use it for anything else. I have a similar component in another project of mine, so I am using a lot of reusing a lot of the code that I built off of that. Awesome. And then I did get a lot of inspiration off of other tutorials. So if you see some stuff familiar, definitely not taking all the credit for there. There's great tutorials out there. I always emphasize look at the tutorials, watch them, use them. Great stuff. Okay. So on that, what we're going to need is just a lot of different functions. The other thing you could do, if you really like using the event graph, you can also just do a lot of custom events. So if we wanted to do, let's say, increase health, decrease health, I don't know, increase mana. You could go about doing all of that stuff. That's great. I'm not a big fan of having everything super cluttered, especially if I have a lot of functions. I'm just going to be calling other things. I don't really like it there, so I'm not going to go about doing that. Especially if I'm going to call it in other stuff. I just prefer for my stat component, I'm going to have just a lot of functions to help me out. So with this, we're going to have increase health, as we talked about. We'll have decrease health, increase mana, decrease mana. Right now I'm going to go into doing the mana health first, and then we're going to go into jumping to XP and level, just because changing stats more important. I'm going to move these into health just so they have their own designated area. Bit of organization, definitely a little better. So we got that, and then I am going to need to increase, let's see, some other functions that are going to be used in these. I have them all listed out for me, so all of these names will have a use. They may not make perfect sense. You can feel free to rename some of them. Go ahead. We're going to go add stat value, subtract stat value. Let's set stat value. And check stat. And then max stat. We'll just do max stat hit. I don't really like that name. I may change it. Set to max stat. Okay. And then let me add all this in. Okay, cool. So these are going to be the functions that we're going to use for health and mana. The level system is going to have roughly about the same thing. So you can expect to see about the same type. And as you can tell, a lot of this does increase. The thing that you could do if you prefer the event graph is instead of having these four here, you can have the events uh, out in the event graph, and that would work perfectly the same. All of these are what is going to be called into these type of functions as well as to like other stats later on as well. So if you went into, instead of just having health and mana, so you wanted to add like, let's say, strength, agility, etc., you would then add those in and you'd be able to use all of these functions for that as well. We'll go into that later. Right now, we're just doing very simple health and mana. With monsters, you don't have to go too crazy into the specific stats. So not like you're going to have vitality, dexterity, stuff like that. Most time with monsters, you keep it very generic. Usually you don't need something as complex. I prefer it because I can set exactly what level and then what health they should have, etc. Okay, so with that, we need to start off with these functions. If we're going to call everything, we need to be able to go and call these into these functions. So the most important is we're going to need to check the stat. With this, very simple. We're going to pull in stats. We're going to find, throw that in there. I'm going to change this to stat. And then we'll just need a return. And then we're going to throw in the value that we get. Bam. Super simple. Just checking the stat. Next, we are going to add a stat value. Let me actually move this one to the top since it is the most generic one. First thing we need to do is we're going to get the stat string. Actually, it would have been better if we just drag in. Oh, sorry, one thing to do. Make that appear. So we're going to check the stat, and that's just, we're not setting anything, we're just calling to check to see if we can find it. Connect stat to stat, pretty simple. Another is we're going to add. Drag that into here. And changed. That is the changed value. Feel free to rename it. Like I said, these names aren't set in stone, but it's just the way that they're set up at the moment. Clean that up a bit. I hate how. Let's move this down for her. Just don't like super cluttery stuff. We're adding that there. And then to add, we need to make sure we're adding to check with stat. We got the change value here. We go ahead and add it. Let's drop that down. And then from this add, we're going to want to grab this. Now you can drag this over here and pin it, but I don't like having super cluttery, so we're going to type in stat. And you can go ahead and call that exact same value here. Okay. And then let's grab the stat one more time. We're going to want to query the stat again to check the stat. Sorry, I said query because that was the Ryan Leahy video. We want to check to see if it is equal to 0. Greater equal 0. And branch. Not branch. No. We're gonna here. Stat depleted, as in the stat hit to 0. Another we want to drag into here. Let me actually move that up because I prefer to see them a bit more organized. And then we're going to go with current value. Just adding space for consistency. Okay, so to explain what's happening here, we're checking the stat. We're seeing if the stat is in fact valid. If it is valid, we're going to add to the changed, the added value. So let's added value. Change sounds a little weird. Added value makes a bit more sense. So we're getting the current value, we're adding the new value, and then we're setting that into the map that we have. And then now afterwards, we're just taking the current value and then providing it. So that way when we call this function, if you add, you can grab that value right after. It just makes it a little bit easier. Not completely necessary. The stat depleted. Not necessarily useful with adding stat value, however, it could serve some purposes for debugging, etc. And then next, let's go into subtract. With this, it's going to be very similar, but in the reverse. So let me grab all of this. Drag that into here. We're going to go ahead, change that to stat. Let's keep that consistent. Change that to, what do we added the value? Probably even just type add value. That would work fine. Let's delete these. We need to update it for the current stat. All right. And this one is a bit more helpful on having the depleted stat because that way you know that if that ever reaches 0. I just realized I'm doing the greater than. I wanted less than or 0. Less equal. Back to added stat. Less equal. We want to make sure if it ever hits 0. All right. So let's change this because we're subtracting. Subtract. Grab that, throw it into there. Okay. So with this, we're checking we have the stat. We are subtracting the added value. I guess added value doesn't really make any sense now that we're subtracting. Maybe that's why I put it to change. Right now, we'll leave that. I'm not too picky. Feel free to rename. Everybody has their own logic that makes sense. And then we're adding it into our map. We're checking that stat, making sure if it is less than or equal to 0, and then the stat would be depleted. And then we're just returning the current value. So if you ever need that value, you'll have that available. Now for set, this is when you are wanting to just take the entire value and set it to something else completely. Let's say you wanted to, I don't know, they had 100 health. You want to now put it as 50. You'll be able to change that automatically. This also comes in handy for things where you just want to set them directly to their max health or max mana, or you want to deplete it completely. You'd have that ability to do so. So it's going to be relatively simple compared to the other ones. We're going to drag the max stats. We're going to add. Now, just like all the other ones, we're going to want to get the current stat that we are calling. Let me, once again, clean that up a little. A little annoying that doesn't straighten out the line, but nonetheless, that's fine. And then we're going to want to get the other value. Drag that down. Okay. So this is the changed value that we want to do it to. I could just leave it as value. Now I'm going to do changed value. Awesome. And then afterwards, we're going to return. Now, another thing we can do, which is not necessary, especially since we're changing the value, is we're just going to grab. Sorry, we're going to grab check stat, and then we're just going to populate that value. Now, this would just clean up your code a little better. So the moment you add it, if you wanted to just make sure this provides over, so you don't have to like have a node go around another function or another node, it just saves it. Makes it a little cleaner. Not necessary. You definitely don't need this. But for me, I'm just going to go ahead and have it there. Okay. And then max stat hit. So for this one, we're just going to check to see if the current stat value has reached a max stat value. Specifically, if our health has hit the max health, if the mana has hit the max mana, let's say you wanted to cap the damage. If you want to cap any stat, this is where you would call it. We're going to go ahead, drag this over, and we're just going to find. Let's duplicate that. We're going to do, let's see, greater than or equal. Drag that down. Oop. Sorry. And then return. Sorry, I forgot. Return. Okay. So what we're doing is we want to compare two different stats to themselves. So connect that here, and connect that here. For the top one, we want it to be the current stat value. So stat value. We can even do just stat. It's pretty consistent. And then we'll have max stat. And then just like everything else, let's just clean that up a little. I don't want that comment there. Sorry, I wanted that gone. Okay. Cool. So relatively simple. We're grabbing both the values we're finding. We're seeing if they equal the same, if they do, or if it is more than or equal to. We'll return it whether that is true or false. Cool. So with max stat, There's also set max stat. What this does is it's going to set the value of the current stat to the max stat. If you wanted to set somebody's health automatically to full, you'd use it that way. You gain all of your mana, you use it that way. You go about doing that. Later on, we could go into things like if you wanted to, let's say, increase your health by like 2% per second, something like that. We could go about doing that as well. We'll worry about that at a later time. So, like, if you want to give monster like health regen or mana regen, stuff like that. Let's go to what we're going to do now is we're going to set the stat value. We're going to get the current stat. And then the other thing we're going to have to do is get the max stat. From there, we're going to query, check. And we'll just plug that in there. And then we're going to return. And just make sure to pump that value in there again. All right. So what this does, it takes the current stat, the max stat, make sure that that max stat in fact exists, gets the value of that max stat, and then gives us that change value. And then, of course, at the end, we just make sure to populate it if ever. Awesome. So that covers the stat stuff. And now we can actually go into increasing our health. So for this, what we'd want to do is we need an input. So what are we increasing it by? So let's go with add value. Change this to a float. We're gonna add stat value. Plug that in here. And now this comes into how are we going to reference the stat that we want? Now there's two ways we can go about doing it. You can either type it in like this, such as health. That works perfectly fine. The only thing is if you ever make a typo, you may have to locate where exactly that typo is at. Not particularly difficult within this component since everything's located here, and you're not really going to call the stat in other blueprints. The other alternative is you can promote this to a variable. What you would do is we'll just do health. Do I want to include stat, health stat? I think it's pretty clear if it's stat. Yeah. We're going to do that. The only thing is now we're going to have to add all of the other ones if we go about doing this route, which is perfectly fine if you want to. So let's move this to stats. So we're going to go ahead and do this route just because it's going to be a little easier. You can go ahead and type in things if you want. That's not too bad. Let's go max health. Which means I'm going to have to now type in everything. So one moment while I do all of this. Attack range. What was it? Armor? I think that's pretty. Armor, attack, range, attack, mana. I put a space in it. Okay, no, cool. Armor. Try to keep them the same names. Of course, you can put like a stat in front. You can have the underscore or whatever. If you end up adding more variables, you probably want to name these a little better than compared to what I currently have. Let's go max mana, health, 1, 2, we got 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cool. All right, we got all that. Right now, let me save myself some time. So we'll go with XP, max, low. Max low. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Change that to level. Change this to max XP. Change that to XP. Max XP. Awesome. So with that, cool. Why did that change? Huh. Oh, I think it's because I promoted it and it just assumed that's what it was. Nah. That's not what we're doing here. Get stat. Stat. Probably shouldn't have promoted from that direction because then it just assumed that's what I was doing. Which is unfortunate, but at least you guys see that problem. We got one more location. Stat. Awesome. Go back to here because I promoted from this direction, so then it did that. All right, so with that, we now know how to call this one. Afterwards, what we're going to do is go into here. We're going to branch. Now we want to see, have we hit the max stat? So with that, we're going to want to call the max stat hit. And then real quick, let's just make this a pure function as well so that we don't have to attach this anywhere. We're going to drag that out. And now we have the stat and max stat. And actually, one more thing that I want to do is under these, let's make it so that you don't need a pass by reference. Some of them, it didn't store or it didn't make that happen, but let's just make sure, just in case you wanted to type it, you do have that ability. Not all of them should need a pass. Yeah, see, some of them, it's not even there. All right, let's go back to increase health. Cool. So now if you want to type it in, you absolutely could. We're just going to drag in this just to make it a little easier. So with that, super simple. Has health, hit max health. If true, what we'd want to do is if you did hit your max health, we want to make sure you're never above that. So we're going to want to set stat value. With here, the stat that we are setting is going to be our health. And we want to make sure it hits the max value. So actually, let's take this off. We want to set it to the max health. Sorry, I used the wrong function. And then to make our lives easier, we got health and we got max health. And then, like always, let's get that return value. Again, I want to specify the return value is absolutely not necessary for all of these functions. I like it because it keeps my code clean and I could just pull that value instead of finding the stat again. The less amount of checks that I need for checking the stat, the easier it gets. And then if false, we're going to go into return. And what we want is just the stat. So we're going to grab health. So that way, if false, we're passing on the current health value. And then if we set it to max, we're just going to pass that value as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and save here. That's increasing health. So increasing mana is going to be relatively the same. We're just going to do a slight difference. So let's go ahead and copy all of this. Go into increase mana. Connect it here. Added value. Change all of these nodes. And we're just going to switch these to mana. So we are adding to mana. Just duplicate all of these here. Control D to duplicate. It's pretty. And then we'll go here. Let's move that up. Awesome. So with that, we are adding mana, checking to see if we hit max mana. If it's true, we'll make sure it only is the value of max mana. And then if not, we'll just get the current value. Decrease health, it's going to be very similar. The only thing is we're going to, instead of adding, we're going to subtract. Instead of setting to max, we're going to set it to 0. So with mana, let's just copy this. Decrease mana. We are going to change some nodes here, but I'll make it a bit easier. Added value. Is that what we used for increase? Added value? Yeah, cool. Let me actually make this a little smaller. I feel like I'm giving you guys very low range of view. Okay. So instead of adding, let's remove that. And we're not going to set to max. What we're going to do is, well, first, let's subtract. Yeah. Subtract value. Subtract stat. We're subtracting here. And then we're not going to be doing the max stat hit. We're going to do stat depleted. So what we're doing is we're checking to see if we hit 0. If we did hit 0, we want to set the stat value. This time, we don't need max mana. Oh, and just like this, what we want to do is, let's go back over here. And turn that off so we can enter in a value. Can I actually change that from here? Yeah, I could have changed it from here, but that's all right. And then we want to remain that at 0. Instead of the output, so we know that they're gonna, no, we'll leave that there. Let's see, this is for mana. Let's actually do this. We're not gonna have a value here. Instead, we're gonna have a bool, and it's gonna be out of mana. And then for that, we're going to check it on. For this one, we're going to have it. It's not. So that way we have a bool to reference. So if we subtract, we're checking it's less than or equal to 0. Okay, cool. Okay, let's see. Let's just double check our logic here because I'm questioning if this should be in a true or false. So stat depleted, if I go in here, I'm subtracting and I'm adding in. And I'm checking the current stat to see if this current stat is less than or equal to. If it is true, that stat is depleted. Okay. Yeah, no, that logic looks good. I'm going to go into decrease health now. Change this to subtract value. Changing this to health and let's see. I mean, if you have no health, let's change this to is actor dead. Get out a question mark. No, that's fine. Subtract value. Let's grab health and then duplicate here. Awesome. So we're just checking to see if subtracting the health, if that is in fact 0, pass it by, and then we'll pass whether they are dead or not. So with that, we have all of these functions. Cool. Next, we're going to go into XP. With that, it's going to be a list of its own functions. They're all going to be very similar, but we're going to be changing it up a bit. So let's get into adding all of those functions. And this is what we're going to go into these for. We're going to add increase XP and increase level. Let me just move that opposites. And I'm going to sort these by XP. I know it can get a little confusing on the naming because, I mean, levels are not XP, but the actual value is XP. But I bunch it all into the same. Levels are just another set of XP. Awesome. So let's... Ooh, actually, I'm going to go against my own logic. Let's change this to level. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I need the functions for the XP, just like we have with stats. So I'm setting these to level because the other things I'm going to bunch in under XP. It's just so that I know that the two are together. So just like the other functions, we're going to do add XP. I'm going to try to run through these a lot faster than the other one, just because it is quite the duplicate of all of them. So we're going to go ahead and set XP value. Check XP. Max XP hit. And then we're going to calculate the next level. So cal next level. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab the XP values. Add. Value. Float. XP value. Max XP value. I'm adding value just because both level and XP is going to be in this. Awesome. Make sure pass by is off. Okay. And with this, add. Go into check XP. We need to be able to make sure it exists. Find XP value. I did here. If it is true, we're going to return. Always like to pass by that value. If false, this should never actually happen, so that should be fine. Did I even do that previously? Check stat. I didn't. Let's just do leave that as that's fine. We're not going to touch that often. That's good. Add XP. And then we're going to want to check that, plug that into there. Add it here. Smooth that down. XP value. As always, we're going to want to compare the current value and the max value. So let's grab XP. Ooh, no. XP value. Max XP value. Check XP. Turn that into pure. We're using the wrong one here. Check XP. Plug that in. Okay. Like I said, gonna go a bit quicker, as this is all similar stuff to what we just did. I think we want a greater than, yeah, greater, equal. Throw that in there, as well as throw in the current value. We'll leave that as is. That's fine. Move that back a little. Cool. Now we're going to do relatively the same thing. All of these. I don't like that. The XP value. Max XP value. Value. Max XP value. Instead of add, let's go float. Did I go into add value? So let's throw this at the bottom. Subtract. Throw that into there. Under subtract here. Okay, cool. We did the same thing. Now, subtracting XP may not be super useful. Like I said, this stuff is not going to be the greatest because, again, monsters, XP doesn't really mix the same. But nonetheless, we're going to go. Let me not reiterate myself too many times, just to fill in the gap of noise. Boom. Boom. Bam. All right, change this to stat. Change value. Return. And again, we want to check the current value. Oh, I got all these open. makes it a little difficult on what I'm doing. All right. We're setting the XP value, so afterwards, this is good. Then we just want to get the current value. So move that over here. So check about XP. Get XP value. Just realize that XP value. Bam. Pop that into there. Cool. All right, we got that. Okay, set XP is done. That's done. Let's throw this at the top just because. Max XP hit. So this is when we've hit that. We want to be able to do just like we did the other thing. Check XP. Check XP. Pump that into there. Add another one. String. Max XP value. Greater equal. See if that is ever true. Branch. And just pump that in. Not branch. Return node. Pump that into here. And we know if we ever hit that. Let's also just throw in that value as well. No. This is just a. Did we do max that here? Yeah, cool. All right. This is for calculating the next level. So if you need to hit a level, so let's go with boom, add. Come on, right click. Check XP. So depending on how you're going to calculate, you could do like a data list, etc. There's a bunch of other options. Right now, I'm going to just keep it really simple because I don't want to go into that. I say simple as I've been going through stuff that's probably not completely useful for a monster specifically, but I plan on using it, and for others, you may as well follow along. You can also just do this very simple. You could literally just have integer variables for them right here, and then just pull those in. That works just as fine. I use a map because I just think it's relatively better. We're only checking for the max XP. So we are increasing the max XP through here, and then return. Once again, grab that, duplicate, pump that into there, get the current value. Bam. All right. Now we can actually increase the level. All right. Let's just throw all that in. And close that out. Let's focus on this. All right. We're going to start with increase XP. Super simple. We're going with branch. Go with max XP hit. Call that into a pure. Pass by reference. Turn that off. XP. Max XP. Throw that in there. This is to make sure this never goes off if we're ever in max. Add XP. Now we'll need to know how much to add. This is where we change the input into XP game. Float. Oh. Oh, it doesn't float. Okay, cool. XP. XP. Max XP. Branch. Increase level. All right, so if you hit the max XP, then we're gonna add, or if you have not hit max XP, we're gonna then add to that, and then if you hit the max XP value, we're gonna increase the level. So by adding XP over here, we check to see if XP value is greater than or equal to the max value. Okay, going back up here, if we are increasing level, we now need to increase the level. Just like what we did with increase XP, we're going to want to copy this, paste, level, max level. And just like before, we're going to want to add XP. What do we name it over here? XP gain. Level gain. Honestly, we could probably have this as integers. I ended up putting it as float, but nonetheless. Level gain. Level. Max level. Subtract XP. Okay. Oh, something was wrong here. Huh. Checking the stat, subtracting, adding. And then at the end, there's no reason for a bool here because we're just subtracting. Sorry about that. Okay, that looks a lot better. Sorry, it took me a second to realize what was happening. So on here, we're gonna want to subtract XP. And then we are subtracting it by the max. Check XP. Pass by reference. Max XP. All right. What that does is that if you ever exceed, so let's say somebody ended up hitting like 150 XP, but you gain a level at 100, so that way you still carry that 50 on afterwards. And then afterwards, you go add XP. Down next level. Make that a pure. Get the max XP. Max XP. Bam. All right. I know that was a lot. That took quite some time, but all right. So now we have a monster that has stats. go into begin play, print. It's going to be a very chaotic amount of prints, but let's go into here. Let's just check the stats just to show you that it's working. Max. All right, and this is why I didn't want to go over the ability system, because I realized how long this would have taken. So with that, we should be able to just see the stats the moment we begin playing. Except it didn't. Another project crashed. Okay. Are you not printing? We're getting the value. Delay. Oh. Print screen, 2 seconds, print a log. Let's just delay it 5 seconds. Log. Oh. What? Okay. Apologies. Stats. We just have to add it. And I'll have all of the stats here. And this is where we have all the default values. And then we see 50-50. Let's make a quick debug, and let's do one input. Get all actors of class monster. Get components by class. Stats. Wait, can you do subtract? Oh, you can do from here. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, so I could just grab the, okay. And this is where you can type it in. Whatever stat you're going, you can also just promote that to a variable as well. This is not how we're normally going to subtract and do stuff, but for that, let's just subtract health. 50. Print. New value. All right. 5 seconds. We'll see it. Bam. And then now I'm going to subtract value. Now we're at 50. Now we're at 0. Now we're at -50. -100. Now, of course, we need to add ways to stop that from happening. Normally the character is dead at this point, so that's why there's nothing there. But like I said, we have functional health, mana. Awesome. So this one was a lot longer than expected. However, next I'll go into the abilities. I'll try to map it out to be shorter than an hour and 15 minutes. But yeah, thanks for watching through. And now we have functional stats for the monster.